They say you're selfish if you stop picking up calls, arrogant if you protect your peace, cold if you start setting boundaries. But let me ask you, what if solitude isn't isolation, but evolution? You've spent years breaking yourself into pieces just to fit inside conversations that weren't meant for you, smiling when your soul ached, showing up for people who wouldn't notice if you disappeared tomorrow. You've been the one who texts first, who apologizes first, who tries harder while everyone else drifts. And for what? Approval? Belonging? No one ever told you that focusing on yourself would feel lonely at first. That silence would feel heavy before it became sacred. That becoming mentally strong often starts with walking away from the crowd, from the noise, from the version of you that was built to be liked. This is not a self-help slogan. This is a personal rebellion, and it begins the moment you decide, my energy is mine to protect. In this video, the more you focus on yourself, the stronger your mind becomes. We'll explore why Stoicism teaches that turning inward is not weakness, it's wisdom. You'll learn why detachment is power, why peace is earned, and how solitude, when chosen with intention, can forge an unshakable mind. Because the world doesn't need another person desperate to be liked. It needs you focused, centered, and unbothered. 1. The more you force it, the more it slips away. Have you ever tried to hold water in the palm of your hand? The tighter you squeeze, the faster it escapes. What you wanted to protect, what you thought you were securing, vanishes before your eyes. Not because you let go, but because you held on too tightly. That's how life works too. Most people don't fail because they lack talent or desire. They fail because they grip too hard. They become obsessed with outcomes, desperate to control what cannot be controlled. They fixate on results so intensely that they forget the most powerful thing they do control: their approach, their presence, their process. It starts innocently. You want something, a promotion, a relationship, recognition, change. You envision how it should look, how fast it should arrive, what others should do in response. You visualize success, set the goal, and then, unknowingly, you begin to tighten your grip. You micromanage every step, overthink every response, stress over every delay. And before you realize it, you're not creating anymore. You're chasing. You're not progressing. You're panicking. You're not in flow. You're forcing. The Stoics would tell you, this is the path to suffering. Because the more you fight to control the uncontrollable, the more you lose control of yourself. That's the real cost. The cost isn't just fatigue or disappointment. It's the erosion of your peace. It's the slow, invisible unraveling of clarity. You stop seeing clearly. You start reacting emotionally. And the very outcome you wanted slips further away, not because the world is against you, but because your mind is no longer grounded. Or, as Epictetus warned his students, don't aim to be in control of the outcome. Aim to be in control of yourself. That wasn't a quote for motivation. It was a survival tactic for the soul. Because every time you let your happiness depend on something outside your control, you hand over your mind to chaos. You become a leaf in the wind, hoping the weather stays calm. And yet, most people live in a constant state of mental tension. They mistake worry for preparation. They mistake force for determination. But the Stoic knows better. The Stoic knows real strength is still. Real power is directed, not desperate. A sword doesn't shake before it strikes. A wise mind doesn't rush toward pressure, it breathes into it. Picture someone you know. Maybe it's even you who tries to control every part of their life. They plan every detail, anticipate every reaction, overanalyze every result. They're always a little bit tense, always chasing the next thing. They think they're being productive, but inside they're drowning. like the guy who plans every step of his future but can't sleep at night because none of it feels real anymore. Now contrast that with someone who has mastered the art of focused detachment. They show up every day, they work with care, but they don't grasp, they don't cling, they act, then let go. And somehow, things tend to flow better for them, not because they're lucky, but because they're aligned. The difference isn't in effort, it's in energy. One is rooted in desperation, the other is rooted in discipline. That's what the Stoics teach us, to live in alignment with nature. And nature doesn't force. Trees don't hurry. The tide doesn't panic. The seasons don't rush. Everything unfolds with silent strength, without fear, without frenzy. As Marcus Aurelius reflected in Meditations, nature acts without hurry, yet everything is accomplished. It's not speed that matters, it's stillness with direction. You don't need to strain to become who you're meant to be. You need to be consistent, present, and patient. Stillness doesn't mean passivity. It means power without noise. It means choosing to step back when stepping forward would be reckless. It means recognizing that there are seasons when planting is wiser than harvesting, and moments when waiting is more powerful than acting. So the next time you feel like you're slipping, when your grip is tightening, when fear is rising, pause. Ask yourself, what am I actually trying to control right now? Am I operating from presence or panic? Then do the one thing most people are too afraid to do in a fast-paced world. Loosen your grip, because when you stop squeezing, you see more clearly. When you let go, you move with intention. And when you act from stillness, not from strain, you stop chasing outcomes and start building something stronger, yourself. And that is what never slips away. 2. Stillness is not laziness. It's strategic power. In a world where the loudest voice gets the spotlight, stillness is often misunderstood. We're taught that if we're not constantly doing, we're falling behind. That rest is weakness. That slowness is failure. So we run harder. We fill our calendars, our inboxes, our heads. We confuse motion with meaning and eventually forget how to stop. But here's a quiet truth. Busyness is often just a socially acceptable form of escape. We keep moving not because we're productive, but because we're uncomfortable with stillness, with space, with silence. Because when we stop, the questions get louder, the emptiness becomes real, and we're forced to face the one thing hustle culture never prepares us for, the self. Yet the Stoics saw stillness not as a luxury but as a weapon, not as laziness but as precision. They knew that only in stillness can a person discern what matters. Only in stillness can we find the clarity to act with force, not frenzy. Seneca once wrote in letters to Lucilius, "If a man knows not to which port he sails, no wind is favorable." In other words, without direction, speed is useless. Without clarity, all effort is waste. Stillness isn't the opposite of ambition, it's its foundation. We idolize those who never stop working, but perhaps we should pay more attention to those who know exactly when to pause. Warren Buffett, arguably the most successful investor of the modern age, spends 80% of his day reading, thinking, waiting. He once said, "The best thing I do every day is wait." That patience isn't passive, it's strategic, it's informed restraint. While others rush into the market with noise and emotion, Buffett moves only when the signal is clear. He once waited years before investing heavily in Apple company many had written off as past its prime. But when he did, his quiet conviction turned into over $100 billion in value for Berkshire Hathaway. He didn't rush to be first, he waited to be right. That's not luck. That's the return on stillness, the result of not mistaking speed for wisdom. Imagine an archer drawing a bow. The longer they hold, the more precise the aim. They don't release just because their hand is tired or because someone's watching. They wait for stillness, for breath, for alignment. And when they release, it's silent but deadly. That's how stillness works. It doesn't broadcast itself. It builds quietly. And when it strikes, it does so with precision. Or think of the firefighter who waits in stillness before entering a burning building, not because he's afraid, but because timing is survival. He watches, he listens, he feels the heat behind the door, because one wrong second, one rushed decision could cost a life. His pause is not hesitation, it's strategy, it's strength, it's mastery of the moment. Now, picture a modern CEO in a high-stakes boardroom. The room buzzes with tension. Everyone speaks at once. But the one who says nothing, the one who listens, who observes, who waits often becomes the one with the most powerful voice when they finally speak. Not because they spoke louder, but because they spoke last. And with clarity. Stillness is not the absence of action. It's the rejection of noise. It's saying no to the pressure of reaction and yes to the space where thoughtful response is born. In a world addicted to immediacy, stillness is a form of rebellion. In a culture that worships visibility, stillness is sovereignty. But let's be honest, stillness is not easy, especially when everything around us screams for motion, when every minute feels monetized, when even rest becomes productive recovery. It takes strength to sit without scrolling, to think without broadcasting, to observe without reacting. It takes courage to wait not out of fear, but out of strategy. Marcus Aurelius, one of history's most powerful emperors, led armies and governed a vast empire yet. His greatest wisdom came not from command, but from what he practiced in silence. As he reminded himself in meditations, "Nowhere you can go is more peaceful, more free of interruptions than your own soul." It wasn't a statement of escapism, but a directive. Even amidst war and politics, he trained himself to return inward, because he knew true stillness isn't found in the world, it's forged within, and so must we. Find a moment in your day where you do nothing, not out of laziness, but out of intent. Not because you're tired, but because you're sharpening. Sit, breathe. Let your mind stop sprinting toward the next fire to put out. Let the noise pass by like a train you don't have to catch. Don't chase it, just watch. In that space, patterns emerge. Priorities realign. Reactions soften. You begin to see what actually deserves your energy and what doesn't. You reclaim the power to respond instead of reacting. And that changes everything. We often think that greatness is built in noise, in the grind, in the meetings, in the rush. But more often than not, it's built in silence, in hours where no one is watching, in thoughts no one hears, in the discipline to pause before you move. Because the arrow that changes everything is rarely the one fired in haste. It's the one pulled back with patience, aimed with clarity, and released in stillness. That's not laziness. That's precision. That's power. And it belongs to those who have learned to be still. 3. Stop chasing the clock. Start trusting the season. A seed never checks your watch before it grows. It doesn't sprout because it's spring on your calendar, or bloom because someone else is already in full bloom. It grows when the soil is ready, when the roots are deep enough, when the season is truly its own. But we forget that. We live in a world that tells us there's an expiration date on our potential, that if we're not successful by 30, married by 35, or financially free by 40, we've somehow failed. That the timeline for achievement is fixed, and it's getting tighter by the second. So we panic, we sprint, we compare, and slowly, without realizing it, we turn our life into a race we were never meant to run. We scroll through highlight reels and let them rewrite our inner clock. We measure our beginnings against someone else's middle, our winters against their summer, and in doing so, we rob ourselves of the most essential truth. We all grow in different seasons. The Stoics knew this well. They didn't live by the pressure of timelines or the noise of society. They lived by alignment with nature, with character, with what was truly in their control. As Marcus Aurelius reminded himself in Meditations, "Don't be ashamed of needing help. You have a duty to fulfill, just like a soldier on the wall of battle." In other words, no matter where you are in the journey, early, late, or somewhere in between, it still matters. Your duty isn't to match the pace of others. Your duty is to stay in the fight. And sometimes staying in the fight means trusting that your time has not passed, it just hasn't arrived yet. Like the farmer who walks his fields at dawn, nothing blooming yet. Just cold soil, but still, he shows up every morning, trusting the seed he planted months ago. He doesn't question the silence. He doesn't rush the rain. He knows nature takes its time, and he respects that. Because what he's growing isn't fast, it's real. Look at Colonel Harland Sanders. He wasn't a celebrity entrepreneur in his 30s or a tech billionaire before 40. In fact, for most of his life, he was an ordinary man. He worked as a farmhand, a streetcar conductor, a railroad fireman, and ran a small service station in Kentucky. He was 65 years old, broke, rejected by over 1,000 restaurants, when he finally found someone willing to believe in his recipe. That recipe became KFC. That failure became a fortune. That late bloomer became a legend. But what if he had quit at 45? What if he had believed the lie that success has a deadline? Sanders didn't chase the clock. He trusted the season. He planted long before anyone noticed. And when his time came, he was ready, not because he rushed, but because he stayed rooted. In a culture obsessed with being early, there is something radically liberating about being on time for your own life, about not forcing a bloom before the root system is ready, about doing the work even when no one is watching, especially when no one is watching. Because true growth doesn't care how old you are. It only asks if you're willing. We see this in nature all the time. The cherry blossom doesn't bloom in December. The oak tree doesn't grow overnight. The soil must break before the sprout can emerge. The frost must come before the flower. But when the time is right, when the conditions align, the growth is not just beautiful, it's inevitable. That's how you must think about your life. Maybe you haven't made your breakthrough yet. Maybe the business hasn't scaled, the book hasn't been written, the body hasn't transformed. That doesn't mean it won't. It means your roots are still forming. Your foundations are still solidifying. Your season is not over. It's still coming. And when it comes, you'll move like you've always belonged. So instead of asking, "Why not now?" ask, "What am I building in silence that will be unstoppable when the time arrives?" Rewrite your vision, not by setting tighter deadlines, but by deepening your devotion, not by pushing harder, but by standing taller. Plant now, tend now, trust now, and let the harvest arrive when it's ready. And when doubt creeps in, it will remember this: I'm not late. Are you living by your own season or someone else's? If you feel it's time to reclaim your timing, share your reflection below. Comment, "I'm not late. I'm growing," because you are, and your season is closer than you think. 4. Manifestation is not magic. It's mental discipline. You don't attract what you want. You attract what you do. That's the part they don't tell you when talking about manifestation. That vision boards don't work without action. That journaling your dream life means nothing if you don't wake up and act like it. that scripting, affirmations, aligning with the universe, none of it matters unless it leads to discipline. You can speak greatness into the mirror every morning, but until your actions speak it into the world, it's just another fantasy. We live in a time where it's trendy to manifest the life we want. But most people use manifestation as an excuse to stay passive. They dream instead of do. They visualize instead of build. They think that wanting something badly enough will bend reality in their favor, forgetting that life bends for those who show up, not those who just wish. The Stoics would have torn this illusion apart. They didn't believe in sitting still and waiting for fate to deliver what you deserve. They believed in becoming the kind of person who's worthy of the outcome through consistency, resilience, and focused will. Epictetus, in his discourses, reminds us, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. Not believe it into existence, become it through deliberate action. There's no such thing as effortless manifestation in Stoicism. There is only quiet, master-yearned, not imagined, because what you repeatedly do, day after day, is what rewrites your reality. Not what you chant, not what you hope for, what you practice in silence. Take James Clear, for example, the author of Atomic Habits, an easy and proven way to build good habits and break bad ones. He didn't go viral overnight. He didn't manifest millions of readers with affirmations and dream boards. He wrote 2 articles a week, every week, for years. No big breakthroughs, no magic moments, just 1% better over and over again. That 1% turned into a book. That book turned into a global phenomenon. Atomic Habits has now sold over 20 million copies, been translated into more than 60 languages, and changed the lives of readers around the world, not because he hoped for impact, but because he built it through disciplined repetition. That's the kind of manifestation the Stoics would admire, one rooted in effort, not entitlement. We're a culture obsessed with motivation, but the Stoics were obsessed with momentum. They didn't wait to feel ready. They didn't need signs from the universe. They knew emotion is fleeting, but discipline is a muscle, and the only way to grow that muscle is repetition. That's what most people miss when they say, trust the process. They forget that trusting the process means showing up, especially when you don't feel like it. It means keeping your promises to yourself. It means doing the work even when it's boring, thankless, invisible. Because true manifestation doesn't feel magical. It feels mundane. It's waking up early to write when no one reads your work. It's going to the gym when your body still aches from yesterday. It's studying when your friends are partying. It's saying no to shortcuts. It's saying yes to structure. And slowly but inevitably, what once felt like discipline becomes identity. You stop trying to become something. You start being it. Quietly, without applause, without magic, just with presence and persistence. So the real question is, what are you doing when nobody's watching? What habit are you planting in silence, trusting that one day it will bear fruit? Maybe it's writing 200 words a day. Maybe it's putting $5 into savings every morning. Maybe it's 10 push-ups before your first cup of coffee. It doesn't matter how small. It matters that it's real, that it's yours, that it's repeated. Because success isn't built in breakthroughs, it's built in micro movements. And here's the irony. If you stay consistent long enough, it will feel like magic. Not because the universe delivered something, but because you'll look around and realize you became someone you used to dream about. As Seneca once wrote in Letters to Lucilius, it is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it. The life you want isn't waiting in some far-off destiny. It's hiding in your daily decisions. So, if you want to manifest something great, don't speak it. Practice it. Live like the result is already unfolding. Build before the world believes. And let your actions be the loudest affirmation. Are you willing to commit to one small thing each day without waiting for motivation? If you are, write it down. Comment: 1 habit, 30 days. Let's go. Not for magic, but for mastery. And that is real power. 5. Become the person before you reach the goal. You don't get what you want. You become the kind of person who can earn it. That's the uncomfortable truth most people avoid, because it requires them to change before the results show up, before the money arrives, before the recognition comes, before anyone believes in them. We're taught to chase outcomes, but no one tells us that the outcome is just the surface. The real transformation happens underneath, in the dark, in the repetition, in the quiet days when nothing seems to be moving. Not in the day you crossed the finish line, but in the thousands of steps when no one clapped. And that's the part most people skip. They look at the goal and want it now. They ask, how long will it take? But the Stoic asks a different question. Who must I become for this to be possible? Because if you don't become it, you won't sustain it. If you don't grow into the weight, the moment it arrives will crush you. The Stoics were clear. The outcome doesn't define the person, the process does. In Meditations, Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one, not theorize, not fantasize. Become, in silence, in sweat, in stillness. That's where real power is forged. Look at David Goggins. He didn't become the toughest man alive by accident. He wasn't born disciplined. He built it. Through pain, through pressure, through self-confrontation. He was overweight, depressed, and invisible to the world. But every day, he chose to suffer with purpose, to run when his legs screamed, to study when his mind resisted, to keep a promise to himself when no one else was watching. What he became wasn't just a Navy SEAL. It was a weaponized version of himself, one forged in the silence that most people run from. That's why his story hits so hard, because it wasn't glamorous. It was built in the shadows. Or take J.K. Rowling. She wasn't writing Harry Potter in a luxurious office surrounded by fans. She was a single mother on welfare, scribbling in cafes, rejected by 12 publishers, barely surviving but still writing, still believing in a world no one else could see. Not because she knew it would succeed, but because she had become someone who couldn't not write. Both of them became something before the world caught up. That's the key. And yet most people do it backwards. They wait for the title before acting like a leader. They wait for the opportunity before preparing like a pro. They want to feel confident before starting, but confidence isn't a prerequisite. It's a result, a side effect of identity built in the quiet. Think of the fighter in the gym. The reps he throws when the cameras are off are the ones that matter most. The punches no one sees shape the warrior the crowd eventually celebrates. But if he only trained when people were watching, he'd never survive the fight. The same goes for you. Every quiet action, every mundane habit, every hard decision made in private, those are the bricks. The identity habit, the practice of acting like who you're becoming, not who you've been. Because who you are in private always becomes who you are in public. And you don't need motivation to do this. You don't need applause. You need a standard. You need a way of moving through the world that isn't dependent on mood or outcome or recognition. You need a code. It's not about perfection. It's about alignment, about waking up and doing what your future self would thank you for. Not once, not when you feel like it, but every day. Maybe it's small. Maybe it's not impressive yet, but it's real. It's waking up early, even if no one notices. It's finishing the chapter, even if it's not your best work. It's showing up when doubt tells you not to. It's putting in one more rep, one more word, one more hour. That's what greatness looks like before it's obvious. So ask yourself, are your daily actions reinforcing the version of you that deserves the life you say you want? Or are they silently building someone who will sabotage it the moment it arrives? You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. And your systems are built on your identity. And identity is forged in silence. So if today feels slow, if you're doubting whether any of this is worth it, remember this. You are not just chasing a goal. You're becoming the kind of person who can carry it. And that matters more than any milestone you'll ever reach. Who are you becoming through all these quiet days no one sees? If you're walking a path no one understands yet, but you're still walking, comment, I build in silence. Lay, because that's where the strongest foundations are laid. That's where real change begins. And that's where you become undeniable. 6. True power is calm confidence. The quiet ones are often the most dangerous, not because they shout, not because they intimidate, but because they don't need to. They're watching, reading the room, conserving energy. And when the moment comes, they strike with such clarity, such precision, that no one saw it coming. That's real power, not the loud, trembling kind that needs to be validated every 5 minutes, but the kind you can feel when someone walks into a room and says nothing yet somehow. Everything changes. We live in a culture that rewards noise. Show your wins, prove your point, speak your mind, post your highlight reel, and we wonder why everyone is exhausted, why people can't sit still, why we feel the urge to respond to everything immediately, why silence feels threatening. But to the Stoic, silence is not a weakness, it is a weapon, a form of clarity, an expression of command over oneself. As Epictetus once wrote in Discourses, keep silence for the most part, or speak only what is necessary and in few words. Not because you have nothing to say, but because you've mastered the power to wait, to watch, to choose your moment, instead of reacting to every spark. True strength doesn't scream. It observes. It listens. It waits. Like the father who calmly holds the steering wheel during a thunderstorm, everyone else is panicking, but he's steady, focused, silent, not because he isn't afraid, but because he knows panic won't get them home. His calm becomes their anchor, his silence becomes their safety. Or like the old mechanic in a small-town garage, doesn't talk much. But when something goes wrong, no one speaks over him. The younger techs watch his eyes, not his hands. He doesn't yell. He doesn't rush. But when he leans over the engine, the whole space goes still. Because mastery needs no announcement. That's the presence calm confidence creates. And it's not built overnight. It's cultivated in restraint, in resistance, in not answering every insult, in not proving every opinion, in letting your results speak louder than your words ever could. Keanu Reeves embodies this. One of the most respected figures in Hollywood, yet you rarely see him making headlines for drama. He doesn't shout about his wealth. He doesn't post about his achievements. He rides the subway, stands in line, grieves in silence, helps quietly, and still millions admire him. Why? Because people don't follow noise. They follow consistency, composure, character. In a world obsessed with image, the man who doesn't care for spotlight becomes magnetic. He doesn't chase power, and so power follows him. But let's be clear, this doesn't mean hiding who you are. It means anchoring who you are, not in applause, not in attention, but in stillness, in the ability to walk into chaos and carry peace, to be challenged without unraveling, to be underestimated and not mined, because you know who you are, and that's enough. Confidence isn't loud. It doesn't need to be. The more rooted you are, the less you need to explain. Think about the people who've impacted you the most, not because they dominated the room, but because they didn't need to. They looked you in the eye, they listened, they chose their words. And when they spoke, it mattered. So how do you cultivate that kind of presence? You practice silence, not as avoidance, but as strategy. You create space between stimulus and response. You train yourself not to react immediately, not to fire back, not to defend your ego at every turn. You take a breath. You ground yourself. You don't act from emotion. You respond from intention. Even if it's just once a day, pause before you reply. Let the moment pass. Let your ego settle. Then speak not to be heard, but to be clear, because the less you need to prove, the more powerful you become. As Marcus Aurelius reminded himself in Meditations, the best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury. You don't need to match noise with noise. You don't need to mirror chaos. The world is full of people reacting. Be the one who chooses to respond. There's a different kind of authority that grows in silence, the kind that can't be taken away, the kind that doesn't need a platform, the kind that walks into a room and shifts it, simply by being grounded. And once you have it, you don't need to announce it. It announces you. So think for a moment. Who's the quietest, powerful person you've ever known? Was it a mentor, a parent, a friend who didn't say much but always made you feel safe? Maybe someone who never told you how strong they were because they didn't have to. Hold on to that image. Then ask yourself, what if you became that person in your own way? Comment their name below. Write simply, "Power is silent," because sometimes the strongest thing you can do is say nothing. 7. When you relax, you return to your center. After power has settled into silence, what's left is space. A space to return, to breathe, to remember who we are without noise. You don't need to travel to the mountains to find yourself. You don't need a retreat in the desert, a guru on a hill, or a plane ticket to Bali. You just need to sit still long enough to hear what's always been there, buried beneath the noise, beneath the urgency, beneath the version of you that's always performing. Stillness doesn't require escape. It requires return. And yet, that may be the hardest thing to do in a world that worships motion. Modern life conditions us to move constantly, to chase goals, chase status, chase noise. Every moment must be filled. Productivity apps, motivational videos, scrolls, alerts. Something has to be happening, or else we feel like we're falling behind. But what if falling behind isn't the danger? What if losing yourself in the noise is the greater risk? What if staying busy becomes the most seductive form of avoidance, keeping you just distracted enough from the questions that actually matter? The Stoics knew this danger well. That's why they didn't merely encourage solitude, they practiced it as a form of strength. They called it ataraxia, a deep, unshakable inner tranquility. It wasn't passivity, it wasn't zoning out. It was presence without disturbance, groundedness in the midst of chaos, the kind of stillness that doesn't depend on surroundings, but grows from within. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself in Meditations, "Nowhere you can go is more peaceful, more free of interruptions than your own soul." It wasn't metaphorical for him, it was strategic. He governed an empire and led armies, yet he returned to silence to stay centered. His journals weren't just reflections, they were acts of survival, of clarity. But today, we don't journal to survive. We scroll to forget. We drown in stimulation. And in doing so, we forget how to just be. We forget that stillness isn't passive, it's powerful. It's how we listen for the voice underneath our conditioning, the one that says, "Slow down. This is not who you are. Come back." To return to your center is not to abandon ambition, it's to align it. Because effort without alignment becomes noise. Motion without intention becomes exhaustion. And when you're exhausted long enough, you lose sight of what you were running toward in the first place. You lose yourself not suddenly, but slowly through the daily erosion of not listening. That's why one of the most radical acts you can commit today is not to do more, but to do nothing. Not forever, not dramatically, just for 15 minutes. No tasks, no music, no apps, just you and your breath. Sit with yourself, let the tension rise, let the mind wander, and then begin to return. Beneath the busy thoughts, you'll feel it, that quiet hum, that center, that stillness. It doesn't speak in noise. It doesn't need to. It's the part of you that's never needed validation. It's always been whole. You've just been too loud to hear it. Imagine the man meditating in the heart of the city, horns blaring, footsteps rushing, life buzzing around him. But he remains still. Not because he has escaped the noise, but because he has chosen not to invite it in. He's not resisting the world. He's choosing to respond from within it. Or think of Haruki Murakami, rising each morning at 4 a.m. to write in silence. No notifications, no urgency, just rhythm, repetition, clarity. It's in that quiet space that his words took shape, not because the world gave him time, but because he claimed it. Stillness wasn't his luxury. It was his creative weapon. What if you did the same? What if every morning, before the rush took over, you reclaimed 15 minutes of yourself? Not to achieve, not to optimize, just to return. To check in with the one person who's always with you, but rarely heard, yourself. You may not find all the answers in that space, but you'll remember the right questions. You'll begin to notice what really matters. You'll feel the parts of yourself that are tired of pretending, and the longer you stay there, the stronger that quiet becomes. Eventually, it follows you into conversations, into decisions, into the hardest moments where everyone else panics, but you breathe. So much of our inner chaos is self-inflicted. The fears we feed, the scenarios we spin, the tension we carry because we've forgotten how to release. But when you relax, not collapse, but consciously let go, you give that noise permission to dissolve. You create space for something deeper, something steadier, something that doesn't get shaken every time the world does. Peace isn't something you stumble into on vacation. It's a state you build, slowly, gently, repeatedly, through stillness, through return, through presence. So if life feels loud right now, if you feel disconnected from yourself, don't add more, subtract. Don't push harder, soften. Find a chair, a corner, a patch of morning light. Close your eyes, feel your breath, and listen. You may be surprised at what returns to you when you stop chasing and start receiving. Have you created that space in your day? If yes, protect it. If not, begin now. Comment below and share what helps you truly return to your center. Or write simply, "Silence brings me home," because the world will never get quieter. But you can. What if everything you've been chasing is already on its way, if only you'd slow down long enough to receive it? In a world obsessed with effort, speed and control, the Stoics remind us, true power comes not from clenching harder, but from aligning deeper. You don't manifest what you want by force. You manifest what you are through presence, clarity, and stillness. If this video helped you reconnect with that deeper part of yourself, take a moment now to share your reflection. Drop a comment. What's one thing you're finally ready to stop forcing? Or simply write, "I grow when I let go." If you found value here, Don't keep it to yourself. Share this video with someone who needs this message, and subscribe to the channel to continue walking this Stoic path with us. This isn't just about content, it's about a community of people willing to train the mind, sharpen the soul, and let go of the noise to come home to what matters. Thank you for spending this quiet moment with me. And before you go, I leave you with this question: what if your greatest strength isn't in how hard you push, but in how calmly you wait? Think about that. Live with intention. And I'll see you in the next one.